Today we come together as the last Sunday before we begin the season of Lent, and our readings remind us of what it is like to have an experience of God, what it's like to actually meet God in real life. When that happens, when we have those deep experiences of God, that feeling of the sacred and divine presence right there with us, we can be changed. And I say we can be changed because it's important for us to always remember that our call to discipleship is not something forced upon us. Instead, God meets us wherever we are, and invites us to follow Jesus, invites us onto a path of discipleship, never forcing. And so that invitation is ours. We get to choose, we get to make the choice about whether or not we decide to follow that path. Today, we're reminded of the power that God's presence, the power that God can bring to us for real transformation. And that kind of real transformation is something I think that we at St. Michael know very well, because not only is today the last Sunday before we begin Lent, but today is also the Sunday when we go to celebrate so much of the work that we have been doing over these last few years. Following the service, we're going to have our spring parish meeting and then a celebration outside. And man, I don't know about you, but I feel like I prayed well because today's weather is perfect. And so I hope that you will join us for that celebration outside, because what we are actually celebrating is that we have made a commitment. This group, this community, has actually committed ourselves to the transformation that God invites us into. Now, when we make a choice to follow Jesus, then that choice is something that we have to recommit to each day, each week, each year. We have to recommit to that choice because we walk an actual path that takes us closer and closer to God. Now, the work that we have been doing over these last few years, it is all about strategic patience. And I'm not a patient person. And so it has been something, of a trick that we have actually gotten as far as we have over these last few years, because it really does lean into that old maxim where we cannot do as much as we think in a year, but we can do a whole lot more than we think in 5. We are actually kind of on that precipice. We're sort of on that line as we look ahead to the season of Lent to give ourselves the gift of the opportunity to choose transformation. That the choices that we make create habits that do change us over time. Now, I hope it's apparent, and if it's not, I'll say it again, that all the work that we have been doing to our physical campus to transform the building that we live in, to support the ministry that we share, has been a very, very good thing. And it will be a great thing once it is finished, but it's never been the highest good. Because although that building is necessary, of course, to support the work that we want to do when we are here together, that building is only to support what we do as a committed community of disciples, as a committed community that uses our discipleship to actually change the world beyond these walls. The highest good is that our hearts and minds are changed. The highest good is that we answer the invitation of God to participate in the transformation that we are offered, so that we can then overflow into the world around us to be part of God's kingdom building everywhere else. That growth, that is the highest good. And when we invest ourselves in physical changes like what we are experiencing right now, we actually invest our heart and our mind in the kind of discipleship transformation that makes all of the rest of that good possible. So speaking of growth, let's get specific about what happens on Wednesday. This coming Wednesday, Ash Wednesday, begins the season of Lent, that sacred time that is carved out of our year, every single year, that gives us an explicit opportunity to actually make a choice to move into God's transforming power, that make a choice that allows us to grow closer and closer to God. The 2 lessons that we hear today, They are lessons about transformation. The first one we heard is that amazing story of Moses going up and being face to face with God, being in God's real presence, and being so powerfully affected that he began to scare people. He had to cover his face because God's power was so much in him. And then, of course, we hear our gospel lesson where Jesus takes some of his disciples up to a mountaintop and there sees Jesus changed right in front of them. And it's so powerful that they don't even want to go anywhere. They want to stay right there. And of course, we hear God's powerful message saying, you cannot stay. You have to go. Because God's power, God's transformation is never just for us. Yes, perhaps it begins with us, but God is constantly nudging us, pushing us to take that kind of transformative power out into the world. That is what we get to do little by little. And Lent is one of those opportunities for us to really make that choice hit the ground. Lent has always been an opportunity for us to change up our habits, because habits are one of those things that define our identity. What we actually do, the habits we have, make us who we are, shape us into who we are becoming. And we cannot end habits, but we can change them. Lent is that moment every year where the church invites you to not just like hit yourself over all the bad things that you've done, because we've all done bad things. It's not about that. It's about an opportunity to say, how do I actually want to grow? Yes, of course, that could be making ourselves better. But I want us to really anchor ourselves in growth this Lenten season. Who are you? What challenges do you have? Where do you have the opportunity to actually make the most impactful growth? And then pick something small that you can do in the 40 days of Lent. You don't have to change everything about you. You don't have to change the world around you. Just change something. Make a move down that path as you grow closer to God. Last week I talked about the power of forgiveness. Told the story of forgiveness and then encouraged you to consider how you might be someone who offers forgiveness or seek forgiveness from someone else. And I cannot tell you how many notes I received over the week from people who marinated in this idea of forgiveness and really entered into self-reflection to figure out how this fits in their life. And one story I got from a very active parishioner where she said this: on Monday, so last Monday, someone broke a promise that they'd made to me several months ago, and I was so angry at first. But then what popped into my head was what you said on Sunday. I recalled that you said forgiveness is not about condoning the actions of the past. Forgiveness is about creating a new path forward for ourselves. And that forgiving someone isn't because they earn the forgiveness or even because they're sorry. Forgiveness is what we offer because we deserve peace. And I thought that, and I took a breath, and I chose to forgive. And I was so surprised at how quickly I felt at peace. I know this person, and I know that peace is perhaps not always every day what she feels. And I think that it's one of those gifts that we can give to ourselves. We know how to live in this world, and we know what is right and what is wrong. We know what is just and unjust. And when we seek after that, we can actually hold things up a little too tightly. And when we see things that are wrong and unjust, we can focus so much on that we can actually forget that we can be a power for what is just and for what is good. That we, in our faithfulness, can actually speak into the world and into our own lives what is just and what is good. We can take the love that we have received from God, that invitation to be transformed, and in very small ways that have big impacts, we can actually begin to change our lives, the lives of those around us, and of course, the world. Lent is time carved out just for this. We begin on Wednesday. We begin those 40 days where we get to invest ourselves in some small ways that can transform us over the weeks of that holy season. And so this week, As you prepare for Ash Wednesday and prepare to begin this season, ask yourself what you need. What is God offering to you specifically? How can you set yourself up to make a few small changes for just 40 days, knowing that if you do that for 40 days, those changes will be pretty sticky and they might just hang with you for the rest of your life? That's the invitation of transformation. That's the challenge of discipleship. We have proven that in this community, we can do a whole lot when we work together. As you think about your own discipleship over these next few weeks, know that you do not walk that path alone. You walk with us. You are part of this community that can support you in that transformation. And with God's help, we will make changes that not only last a lifetime, but changes that move us closer and closer to who God made us to be. Amen.